Good morning and welcome to Essential Ingredients. I'm your host, Justine and today we have Merril Gilbert. Welcome, Merril. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have this chat, to learn a little bit more about you.
Well, we have had some great conversations in the past, and this is really an honor to have this one to get to really share an unusual career and how it went from one thing to another, but where it is today and amidst all that's going on in our world.
Definitely. And I think that your experience is so vast and so varied also that our listeners can really get a lot out of it, both for inspiration as well as a way to sort of tap into somebody that has so much to share. And so I'd just love to learn a little bit about your story and where it all started.
Oh, fantastic. So I was a middle-class child in Arizona. Anyway, so, I grew up, my father, was in the food business, and, it was just something there. But it turned out that I had no idea that this was going to be where my life took me. And interestingly, I was, lucky to be one of those first generations that really, not only did we travel by car around the country, but really started traveling outside the country. And that really changed my perspective. And it changed, pretty early on, around, my mother could not cook at all to save her life. And, having TV dinners to, really going to these restaurants all over the world and, everything from street food to, very fancy formal things. So it really was this perspective that started to happen. And then, you go off to college and you're supposed to get a degree and Lord knows it probably should have been a business degree, but at that time I was into social science. So I got a double degree in anthropology and geology. And it actually turns out to be the foundation for what I really needed to have. And the reason is because it has always been this, just this way in which I enjoy learning about new cultures. Like, I don't really believe you can truly have empathy. You can't really affect leadership and really help people, achieve and develop to be the best that they could be without having an understanding of where people are coming from.
It's so funny to tell you, I was having this exact conversation this morning with somebody we're just onboarding who comes from India. And it was merely because I went to United Nations school and I was explaining that my experience going to this school has given me an opportunity to better understand people's cultures, perspectives, and allow me to be more open to adjusting my perspectives and the way that I can think about things. So it's and in line with what is going on in the world right now, I think it's such an important skill. I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, but that's what this conversation is about, right? How do we get from where we start our lives to where they evolve, and how do they continue to evolve? And for some people, it's fine to just stay in your world and be that. For me, it's just a constant desire to learn new things and to evolve. And so again, back into those early days of school and education, it was in Arizona, so I spent a lot of time in with Native Americans in both in Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah. And then after that, after college, ended up in Wyoming doing environmental impact studies in oil world, so that was pretty crazy. Because, even though I think I'm 6 feet tall, I'm only 5 feet tall. And, here's this young woman like driving around in the middle of, Wyoming by herself. So there was some really interesting events, that happened during that time. But somehow after this supposed career as an anthropologist, I ended up really kind of ending up in the food world accidentally, back in it, and managing. And because my parents were in that, and because I've always been very strong-willed and not a very good follower of directions or anything else.
Totally empathize.
You only read the directions when all else fails, right? So I must have skipped something while I have extra parts. So making this all a way longer story than it needs to be, I ended up, back in the food world, back in restaurants. And it was also at a time when chain restaurants were really starting to expand. And so again, as a woman, it was very hard to get promoted outside of the regular floor management, to get to assistant general manager, even a general manager. And at this point in time, this is also when Alice Waters, Wolfgang Puck, like all of these, there was now a movement around food that was very different out of this chain environment, which was great, having foundational business skills of P&Ls and budgeting, but not being a decision maker, and knowing that this is certainly not, Olive Garden is not the type of food and relationship that I want with it. But knowing that I really wanted, at that time, my goal was to be behind one of the top 10 restaurants recognized by Esquire magazine, because that was like the height of the height, right? So right. Now it's a James Beard Award, but at that time, that was the thing. So I was going to determine to figure out how to do that. And I got that opportunity because I had now moved from many different states, but now was in California, and I was working for Hilton Hotels, and I was an assistant F&B manager. And this small independent chain restaurant group found me, and I was the first woman they ever hired in as the general manager, and got a lot of heat for that. But I had this one man that was my mentor, and he saw what I was trying to do, because I said, this is my goal. And so, I kind of forced my way into their R&D team.
Okay, and wait, can I ask which company this was?
So it is now known as King Seafood. At the time, it was the University Restaurant Group. But I got to do this role with the opening of the Water Grill in downtown LA. It has since, been created, completely reconcept. But at the time, it was state of the art. You see it in a lot of movies. It's in the Italian Job. Okay, it's always great to say, hey, I picked that out. But it was great. We traveled all over the country to create this seafood restaurant, to have a live bar, to have this amazing artwork in there. And it was in downtown LA, and we provided, because the music center was there, we provided taxi service. Thomas Keller was the chef next door at so it was a really, the timing was amazing. And then the Rodney King.
Wait, what year was this?
So this is 90.
Okay. So now we're up to Rodney King. Okay, go on.
Rodney King. And so, here I am. My good friend that I made in this restaurant organization was the chef of one of our other restaurants in Long Beach, and that's also where I lived at the time. And so the night of the riots, I had guests up at the music center, but the taxis stopped running, and all their people had their cars at our restaurant in our garage. So I'm in my car driving up, picking up these guests and bringing them back. And then, the next day it's mayhem, and there's, everybody's shutting down. And so we had to shut down this restaurant, and the building we were in had an antique bookstore. And so they were concerned about boarding his up. And I'm we have a $2 million restaurant, and I've got over $1 million worth of assets in it. There's you're telling me that's more important. So I'm calling, because, this is pre-internet stuff. I'm calling all over town going, I have cash. I have lots of cash on hand, and I will pay the first person that comes and boards up these windows. And then I'm oh my God, I've got to make sure that the dishwasher's I've got to make sure everybody gets home, they have what they need. I'm obviously it's a seafood restaurant, fish does not get better with age, so we're sending food home with everybody. We're just all hands on deck. But then my friend, who's the chef now at one of our other restaurants in Long Beach, they just left her. Like nobody was around. They just left her. And she's like, what do I do? I'm like, okay, well, first let me get home. And you have to understand, I had one of the first cell phones, you know, the ones that look like a shoe.
Yes.
With like the 15-minute battery life.
It was like $2 a minute or something, right?
Oh, it was like ridiculous, right? It was just so crazy. And I, you know, I wanted to take this dishwasher we had. I wanted to chop him off at home, which was kind of a lucky thing because he was, you know, kind of a big guy, and I felt kind of good. But anyways, I get back to Long Beach and, you know, go and help her shut down her restaurant, and then we buried it at home for a couple of days. But the whole point being is that it was all about opportunities, you know, and from that experience, you know, once the company started, you know, again, transitioning and some of their senior leadership started to move out, I ended up going to DC from there. And, you know, another great experience. The chef at the time, chef owner, was Mark Miller, and he had opened this restaurant at in DC called Red Sage. So this is the Clinton.
Yeah, I loved Red Sage. I can picture Red Sage. Wasn't it right next to the JW Marriott?
Yeah. So, and across from, you know, the press building. Yeah. So and that guy, you know, again, forward thinking.
I was in DC at that time.
See, we could have known each other.
Could have known each other.
And all of that, you know, again, with Mark was another visionary, right? Another person aligned with his degree also was in anthropology. So he's a real, and this place was an homage to the history of the Western United States, the way that it was conceptually built, and the art and you know, just the creativity. And so I came in as director of operations. Obviously that team had been there a while, but we really set out because it was such a unique thing. It had a full like retail space, and then it had a, you know, casual bar concept, and then downstairs you had not only had a formal dining room, but you also had private dining rooms, and the kitchen was so state of the art. We had our own drying room, again, all not heard of before, and another building that was completely, you know, just a regular office building where everything was built from the ground up. So it was, you know, another multi-million-dollar build out, and these, you know, this was not the norm at that time.
Right.
But again, being a part of that, and in that world, you know, what was my goal was, again, bringing in this culture, and bringing in, because now you had the second generation of the employees. You didn't have him there because he was now off opening Las Vegas and traveling to Asia. How do you recommit the same level of value that was originally intended when it started? And so this is, you know, all leading to, why do I care about the things that I do, and how do I get there? And it's always thinking, where are we today? Where are we going? And where does our food system fall into this? And we have seen that broken down. And what has happened is we went from really caring about this to evolving to caring about this, but also seeing a consolidation in distribution, packing, breaking down, big agriculture, commitments to small agriculture. And so when I was, you know, here I am in DC and recruited to come back to California, but to Northern California, this was now the new rise of the celebrity chef, right? The chef moving into, and so, you know, I was brought into to open a restaurant that was the case study in how not to open restaurants. And, you know, a chef who thought he was like the end all be all, who was just crazy. And sitting there, you know, with investors that had put up about $150,000 to renovate this place. And, you know, I'm like 3 months in, and I'm like, guys, you can come up with another 150 and we can retool this and this guy can go, or you have $20,000 in the bank and you can call it a day. You're all wealthy. It doesn't matter. It's a write-off. And they're like, no, we want to try it. I'm like, that's fine. Then can you sign my check? Because I'm leaving. But the point being there is that, you know, I then became a consultant, right? Because now that was like the buzzword. This is like now the mid-90s. And it's like, whoo, I can do that. And I really actually did, you know, I really helped a lot of, you know, I worked behind the scenes in a lot of restaurants that made the, San Francisco best restaurant list, for many years in a row. And what that looked like, again, was very much because of this really understanding on the business side, but also in the understanding of what are you trying to achieve? How do you get there? And where does that training? So it was not just about, it was really leading the leadership to get to the point where you hand them over a restaurant. And
Right.
you work through the training and the development of the staff. And you really build out a program that is not just like, hiring somebody and saying, here, go take orders, like making sure, because this is the rise of the connection between the food and the experience.
Mhm.
So now as we move, from, chain restaurants, hotels, concept development, everything from fine dining to quick serve, all in the premise of where's food going? Where are we going with that? And so at this point in time, it's now, late, it's early 2000, the internet's coming on, and somehow I come onto this web development program that is supposed to be for the independent restaurateurs. So you got to remember, this is like 99, 2000. Barely anyone has internet. Like we barely have moved from an AOL account.
And it was right around Y2K compliancy where they thought everything
All of this.
combust.
And ordering online is like barely conceivable. And so this website is, there's one restaurateur guy who's heading it up, and my friend that brought me in to help develop content, but the rest of the people are all tech people. And they designed a site that was for tech, right? It was like a great website, but if you were an independent restaurateur with, your idea of the internet and the computer was, playing Leisure Suit Larry while you wait for the dishwasher, this was not helpful to you. Like,
would I have ever heard of this website?
no. But it made a big, they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and launched it at the National Restaurant Show that year. So, and then quickly right afterwards, like we went to go to redesign it. So here's Merril, who knows little about computers at this point in time, other than what I, know. All of a sudden working with the tech writers and the scientists and working really closely with our focus groups. We traveled all over as a team and really taking those product managers and really understanding and leading the conversations of what this information needed to be useful. Like if you're going to give me a job application that I can download, then I need to understand how to do that. And I can't take, people are instant. Like if I can't click through very quickly and it's not intuitive to me, it can't take me a minute or two to find this. Like it has to. Meanwhile, I end up not only helping learn how to do this tech writing and load the site, because everybody else was let go, because now it's like the bust, the .com bust. I'm the one that's loading the site every day for like about a 3-month period of time, which is actually kind of good, because then 9/11 happens and everything stops.
Right.
And my husband, who is a chef and was working for a big company at the time, was also the last person hired in that as a regional chef in this group. So he was the first one to be let go during this time. And we are literally like laying in our flat with a young child who's in kindergarten. And we're like, oh crap, what the hell are we going to be doing? And literally with that great brief experience and the fact that our kid had just gone from preschool of, a bunch of wealthy families that all went to different, independent schools and public schools in the city of San Francisco, we literally put up, we created a company called Mitchell and Gilbert and did an online meal service.
Oh, you were ahead of time.
Way ahead of our time. We had organic baby food. We had, we leveraged all of our relationships with not only the meat and produce companies in the city, but also at the farmers market where we had long-term, standing relations. So every Sunday, we go to the market on Saturday and Sunday, and then we'd write the menu, we'd put up, we'd email it out to all these families that we knew. And then we'd take orders up until like Tuesday, and then we would deliver them on Thursday and Friday. And then we also, started catering and doing in-home cooking classes. Like we survived. But and then I transitioned it to a friend because of the next phase of my life. But the bottom line was that it was, how do you be creative? How do you, again, looking forward, where are the things, knowing what can we do? What can we do out of our kitchen? What can we do? And having that little bit of experience. And,
Let's be honest, about a little bit of experience.
A little bit of experience and how to make food and how to deliver food and how to, create experiences.
Because I was just thinking your experience is very vast. So I was just like,
but it was about attention to detail, and it was about understanding who that, again, in between all this, there was some additional education. I did a executive management marketing program through Pepperdine, and I understood realistically, all the things that you need to think about when you are, again, not only communicating, but trying to create whatever that experience.
I want to thank today's sponsor, Next Gen Chef. Next Gen Chef feeds members with the knowledge and tools that they need to create concepts with purpose and succeed. If you're listening today, they are offering a 1-year subscription for any new founder that wants to participate at a special discounted rate. For more information, email team@nextgenchef.com. If you're interested in becoming a member or just a part of the community, email NextGenChef at team@nextgenchef.com. You can also follow them on Instagram at NextGenChef, as well as on LinkedIn and on Facebook. Thank you again, NextGen Chef, for making this podcast possible. Together, we can change the future of food. I was just going to say, when you were talking about doing your executive management course, before I launched Next Gen Chef, I had another company. But all these companies and all these startups, I feel like I've gotten an on-the-job MBA.
Yes.
Being scrappy, trying to figure out how to do it, learning how to do it, even if I, hire somebody else to ultimately do it, but understanding all the pieces of the puzzle that go into it. I feel I've gotten my MBA just on the job, not from Harvard.
Not from Harvard, but again, and every time I went to do it, it was like, why, should you? But there was a period of time, I think up until last year, when everybody's like, oh, you need an MBA, right? Do they have to have that? Now, who cares? But
now people are not even graduating college. They're like, well, I don't need to do that, But in all fairness, I think there's so much experience out there that we get through the process, through our experience, through our interests. And if we pay attention to that and we leverage that, I think through these challenging times, we're in a much better place.
And again, so that is where it leads to. So, all of this experience. So now I have a little bit of tech. I have this consultancy that has, been in the restaurant and hotels, and also because of that relationship to the celebrity chef and now branding piece of that, started to, because I, understood distribution and contracts and where products come from, there was all of a sudden also the opportunity on the CPG side of really, how do you bring products to market? And so that was the next level. So now we've moved from online meal service back into working for others, because people had come to me. And so an independent grocery store, I was with them for a little over a year, trying to work through to help them compete, because it was during an expansion of Trader Joe's and Whole Foods opening up all over the Bay Area, and really trying to compete in that world of specialty foods and the deli areas and the bakeries, which again, brings me in direct contact with growers, suppliers, and then leads me back to, an acquaintance with Bill Nyman, who brought me into Nyman Ranch, because their teams, everything was being done locally. And the first FedExing of food was just starting to happen. So he was, shipping meat to all different parts of the country. And they were expanding on their retail sector, with their relationships with Whole Foods and Trader Joe's, but he was still the one really on the bigger platform of running the relationships in the food service outside of that. So, we started, I got to co-assist him with Chipotle and Panera Bread. I worked very closely with them to bring a breakfast sausage to market, and really leading in, really helping evolve their chef relationships, because they have these great chef relationships that they always had at their annual hog dinners with our farmers, the Farmers Appreciation and Scholarship programs. But we really didn't leverage that in another way. So really being able to bring a lot of that to fruition. But I was traveling a lot. So, and when the company sold, I was still, again, did all that and opened up all the North American food service distribution. So again, everything from specialty cut houses to the Sysco's and US Foods of the world. It's that full understanding of all of these relationships.
What year was this?
This is now in 2010-ish, 11-ish, somewhere in there. I don't know. I can't remember. 5, 6, 7. It was like 3 years. But my daughter also, the one that was in kindergarten back in the .com thing is now, in her preteen, teenage years. And, I was traveling 3-4 days a week, and my husband was now, in corporate dining. And so he's leaving at 5, 6 a.m. and she, and going to bed at 8:30. And, she had a lot of free time with the early days of Facebook. So, I got off a plane one day and half her eyebrows were gone. And I'm like, okay, this is not okay. Something's happening here. That's not okay. Clearly you're not watching. So
how does that, did you all of a sudden make a change?
Yeah, I just was like, I got to stop traveling and I got to stay home.
And is that sort of where it brings you to sort of the consulting that you've launched now?
Pretty much. So now we're at like 2009. So we have another financial crash, another like disruption but this is really pivotal in the meat industry as well, right? Because this is when, a lot of corn was ripped off, particularly to create ethanol. And you had big, time factory farming, but you're starting to see the first pushes against that. And you start to see, where they thought things like Niman Ranch were crazy, and now it's, and they had made such enough of an impact with that now you were starting to see a shift where people were like, oh, I really do care where I do want my animals treated humanely. I do want to have cage-free eggs, and you have big corporate companies making stands around that. Not just the Chipotles, but really starting to go, oh, wait, we have to care about this. And so it was a perfect time to kind of segue into that, but it also gave me another opportunity to, again, travel again. So, I went with a friend and spent a few weeks in Asia and really, again, started looking at this connection about food, what was happening on the UN front, for the decades approach, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and their initiatives, and knew that, I needed to figure this piece out as well. So really started to get involved with, and always trying to, figure out who's really making a difference and how am I going to meet them? Because I'm a strong believer in that 6 degrees of separation. Like somebody will know somebody that will get me into that conversation. And so that is what I've been able to, the other part of what continues to evolve is being able to be in those conversations. So I got to meet other people that are doing these things and leading some of those conversations and get involved with things like Food Funded and Rob Trice of the Mixing Bowl Hub was leading a lot of really intuitive conversations on the future of food and connecting agriculture and investment and again continuing these relationships. And so now, you know, the next view of this was going to the plant-based world. And so again, you know, with those relationships being introduced early on to companies, you know, that are creating impossible foods, and Kite Hill, you know, bringing the first plant-based yogurts. And
I got to imagine, Merril, as you're meeting these, this is like really new. It's really new. It's innovative. It's exciting. You're at the forefront of it. What was your initial reaction? Did you think they were fads? Did you think that this is really a movement that you're like excited about? You're like, I could see the future of this.
It was always seeing the future of this. It's okay. The things that I end up, you know, following generally, you know, if I was smart enough to like put actual money and invest it, it made a big difference. But you know, more intuitively is the fact that, yeah, I know that this is going to be, and having that, and then again, who are those leaders that I really see doing it?
Can you share with me some of the innovations that you were at the forefront of that you think were really?
Yeah, so I think, you know, getting behind the curtains of Kite Hill before it got, you know, acquired, and just seeing that, you know, trying to be in those conversations, both, you know, having the opportunity to be part of the retail side, but mostly on the food service side, you know, it's like, how do you have these alternatives? On the, you know, and also, you know, during this time, you know, baked goods, all of this, the gluten-free and gluten-full, you know, understanding that our grains were changing and how to create those things and communicate that. But the other is, you know, on this plant-based side is, you know, another woman that was really in the city of San Francisco, but she, you know, had come from all over, but she had opened like the first plant-based restaurant here in the city called Seed and Salt, Mo Clancy, and like knowing that I wanted to meet her and figured out how, you know, where I ended up, you know, through that transition of helping her evolve that and eventually move it on, because another person that I would get to know well, another business partner of hers, you know, we would end up working together at an agency that he was involved with, but because of their friendship, they're also moved into the future of food and had traveled, you know, to the Galapagos with their children for a vacation and find the lupine chocho, and that being a really high quality protein. And really now here they are 3 years later, and that, you know, will start to get moved into the ingredient world and product world. But that is, you know, it's those kinds of relationships that changed these things, you know. So like knowing that she's figured out a way to make food that is tasty and interesting based on what we like to eat every day, but all plant-based, vegan, organic, all of these things can be done. And now you're seeing them, you know, again, now it's 3 years later, look at where it is. Now it's expected, and we have so many choices around this. And this is, you know, and what's, and then the whole food tech right now, you know, I mean, I get to be involved with lots of ecosystems that bring these things together. You know, talking with a company right now that is making an edible utensil, a spoon right now is what they've started with.
All right, an edible utensil so that you can eat with it, but then at the end you don't have to throw it out, you can eat it. What is it made of?
Grains.
What's the texture of it?
It's the texture of like a compostable spoon, but it's like a hard cookie.
It's like a hard cookie.
But they're so creative. They're not food people, but they knew that this is one way of solving the issue around waste and around, you know, that not all compostable things are compostable, right? They take time. So what a way to solve for that, make it edible. And
But
so they,
my question is, what's the shelf life on it? Because you got to figure out how many you're making so that they don't sit and then you waste them, because then you have more waste.
well, they have it in an air, a sealed tight thing. It's got a certain life expectancy. In hot and cold items, it's got about a 20-minute life cycle, before it starts to somewhat break down. They started with the spoon. It's being tested with Haagen-Dazs in different parts of the world with a chocolate and vanilla, but they're going to be having chopsticks and a spork and like.
Wow, I can't wait. So
This is the kind of things that like get me all excited, right? The other, is, there's a company that there's a lot of people talking about packaging, right? And so this company though is literally taking, waste from the trash companies, and going through a both a structural and science-based way of pulling out these elements and recycling, and are working on film and plastic containers that will replace a lot. So the innovation around this, and then, again, bringing it closer down to where do we grow food and how do we do it in a way that is, we see there's the world of people that think animals should not be consumed and should not be part of this. And yet a true understanding of the health of soil and the health of the planet does both. And having, animals not in feedlots, but having them roam, and having soil and water conservation methods, you really re-enrich and rotation. And so it's almost the whole, regenerative piece is this next phase of that. So leading all of this goes to, here's what I care about. I care about people on the planet. I care about, really the innovation and what is coming next, which again, in all of this, you're like, how did you get to cannabis? Well, cannabis was a big part of this too. It is, it's a plant that is medicine. It is a plant that has been around for centuries. Hemp itself is very confusing to people because hemp for rope and cloth, industrial hemp, is very different than cultivated hemp for consumption. But cannabis was definitely, finally going to start to evolve. And so, 6 years ago when I saw that it was going to go recreation here, that finally there was some more mature conversations beyond being a stoner culture, and knowing that not everybody was going to want to smoke this or inhale it and want something discreet and want to include it in their lifestyle. Health and wellness, I knew that was part of it too. So I knew I needed to be in that world. I just wasn't sure what that was going to look like. And again, the whole plant-based things were happening. So there was, a thought around creating beautiful plant-based edibles. But it really got.
Continue on that. Can we go back for just a second?
I feel like I'm all over the place.
We're talking about being plant-based, and how some people, want to get rid of eating meat and killing animals and all this, and that whole thing. And I never try to change anybody's opinion. I like to bring the information to the forefront so that people can make informed choices. But one question I have for you, I've been talking to some people about cultured meats, and I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that and what role that plays with this.
So again, part of the conversation around that, right? Because it's a little more complicated. We just spent years trying to get away from things that we call non-GMO.
Right.
But that was much more about a reaction to, again, the big ag world and the control over seeds and planting and fertilizing methodologies that are harmful to everybody. And then there's also, the disconnect between what it really costs for food, growing it, putting it on plates, putting it in boxes, and what people are willing to pay, because we've made it artificially cheap. And so these economies are all coming together and exploding. So when you talk about cultured meats, it's another way, because again, all of this food tech connect piece that I'm talking about is really trying, it's people being innovative for solving for bigger issues.
Right.
And so, yes, you are taking, in the case of the Impossible Burger scenario, you are literally taking a meme, which is basically a blood similar cell out of a plant, and then taking that and in a lab
Right.
growing that, and then adding a bunch of other stuff to make it resemble and perform in texture, flavor, taste, etc., sensory wise, to a hamburger. And again, kind of going back to what I said with Seed and Salt and Mo, it's changing the mindset for where people can accept this change. You're not going to adapt change and understanding and even try to get people to think differently about food. So maybe I don't need to necessarily give up meat, but man, I'm willing to try.
Yeah, I would say
Something that I already get.
I'm trying to be more plant-based, but I also think it's for the health, my health, as well as the health of the planet. I'm not about, I eat meat, I eat all sorts of things, but I am mindful about where they come from, the soil that they were grown in, how the cows and how everybody was fed, because I feel like if I can make informed choices, there'll be greater demand. So if we can all learn a little bit more about the process on how things are delivered to us, we can create change that will impact the future of food. And with that, I'd love to know from you, because there's so many innovative things that are you have touch points on and that you're part of and that you're investigating. But what's the impact you hope to have on the future of food? Where do you see you digging your own heels in and really having an impact?
I think, where I'm doing it today, and that is, if I can support some of these companies as they make that jump into mainstream. So where you go from novelty to acceptance, where you start from small to large, what is that transition, that in-between piece? And how do you maintain the original values and vision of a company over time? And those companies that we all tend to align with that are all from your leaders, right? So how can I continue to mentor and support leadership at all levels that continue to build, really great companies from within? Because if you're really, yes, you want to, try to keep your people that you like best close to you and part of that. But sometimes, letting them evolve. Like I always want the person that's like, someday I want to be you, right?
Yes.
I want you to be equal or smarter than me.
I feel the same way. I feel the same way.
And so when you're a young manager and a young leader, you don't always feel that way because you're trying to like manage everything yourself and you're trying to hold on to it. So I think if I can make any impact, it's like, it's okay not for things to be messy and not to control everything. But when you're young, you don't know that.
I would totally agree. I mean, as somebody building a startup, the best advice I ever got was from my mom, who told me, you don't have to know how to do everything. You want to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. You have the vision. That's what you're good at. And you might get it done, but surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you, that know how to do some of the things you don't know how to do, is the best way to be successful. Because you can keep everybody on point and make sure that you achieve your mission, and equally have those people that have the skill set that you don't have.
Right. Exactly.
It's for startups, it's about being scrappy. It's about leveraging people's expertise and bringing it all together, which is what I'm trying to do with Essential Ingredients. And I'm so grateful to have you here, Merril, to share your story for our listeners so that they can have a little inspiration and guidance and feel like, they can get dirty and scrappy and messy, because that's what it's all about.
It is. Yeah. It's never the way you expect it to be. And it's, sometimes easy and sometimes not so easy. want to share one other thing, though. The other thing that I really would like to be known, or at least be part of, is that, and it's partly the belief in the company I have today with TraceTrust, and that is, I really want to help women in a way, and people of color, and this is not about lip service, right? This is about really equitable, inclusive society, and that we are seeing, our planet, we're seeing our government, we're seeing so much about those that have and those that have not. And the biggest connection to what we all do have is breaking bread together, building community. And just to touch very quickly on the plant-based side of that, you and I recently, have been talking with a woman who's been creating a plant-based product. I have another African-American woman today that I'm speaking to that is also, trying to change the food in her community. Another woman who I'm not working directly with, but just met, who's doing a delivery service, in like a DoorDash and an Uber, but more for her community. In the East Bay, that has the potential to grow, but she's here, overcoming odds of formerly incarcerated, lesbian, just every single way. And as a woman that tried last year to raise money, how hard that is, but when you're a person of color, how much harder it is. And so if there's any way in which I can help pave that way, make those introductions, help somebody do a better pitch, I want to be supportive of that. And that's, always at the foundation of where I am right now.
Well, I so appreciate that. And I think our listeners will too. And if anybody wants to get in touch with Merril, you can connect with her on the Next Gen Chef app. You can text, you can email. There'll be some contact information also in the show notes, of course. And I appreciate that offer that you make out there, Merril, and I appreciate you joining us today. And I'm grateful for the listeners here. And if this is something you want to hear more on, or tune into more podcasts like this, please subscribe to the Essential Ingredients channel. We are on iTunes and iHeartRadio and a variety of others. So we will be here again next week with another guest to bring to you the essential ingredients you need as you build your business.